Good morning. This is Carl Dakin, and this is the Successful Funding Show. This is a live broadcast brought to you on both LinkedIn and YouTube. And this show is all about the question of funding. We talk about pretty much anything dealing with funding, typically focused on entrepreneurs trying to raise money to start and grow their businesses. But we also expand it to community projects, charitable programs, different things that all have the same thing in common, which is that we're trying to match an opportunity with a particular source of funding in order to get something to happen. So with me today, I have as my guest, my friend and longtime associate, Tom Frey, who is a futurist of world-class status. So I'm privileged to have him with us today. And Tom and I have been talking about the challenges facing a lot of communities today with revitalization, looking at how do you take some massive, large existing situation and redirect it, retune it to put it in a positive direction so that something new can happen that's good for the citizens, residents, and everyone around it. So Tom has put together a white paper. He calls it the Newman Engine. And we're going to talk about that as a mechanism, a strategy, whatever we want to call it, to help get communities back on track, get them moving forward, building wealth and improving the quality of their lives within their own communities. So, Tom, welcome to the meeting this morning. And please share a little bit of your background and who you are so that the audience is familiar with all of your accomplishments before we dive into today's topic.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on, Carl. As far as my background, after 15 years at IBM, I spent 28 years running the Da Vinci Institute, which was set up in 1997 as a futurist think tank. But sadly, it did not survive COVID, so that's a whole nother story. Part of the problem that we're seeing in the world around us right now is that that cities are decaying. They're decaying in the fact that during COVID, people started working from home, and then they decided they never had to go back into the office again. So we have tons and tons of empty office buildings, and on Main Street, we have lots of retail spaces that are empty because Amazon has come in and started shipping directly, so people rarely feel the need or the desire to go out and walk down Main Street in most cities. And that's just a few of the problems. The economic development operations that most cities are running today do not account for these things, and they're mostly based on bringing companies in from other cities, other areas. So an existing company they would try to recruit them to come to their city, and that's actually kind of a backwards way of doing things, because if you recruit a company, the company may show up with 5 executives in the headquarter building, and everybody else is still working from home. So when I created this paper called, and it's actually pronounced the Neumann Engine.
Thank you.
It's named after John von Neumann. John von Neumann was one of the true geniuses. He was a contemporary of Alan Turing, and he helped us to actually create modern computing. So the idea is to actually create a startup engine inside of local communities. If you have a city that's failing or decaying downtown, or parts of the city are going bankrupt, this is a great engine that you could employ to actually revitalize that section of the community. And it starts with trying to create this startup engine from the ground up. So rather than a top-down approach that traditional economic development uses, this is a bottom-up. And and you actually cultivate your own entrepreneurs. And these people will be much more loyal to your city anyway, since they were most of them will be born and raised in that community. So the whole idea is to actually kind of foster this group of people that can start businesses, and then the Neumann engine would actually have a venture studio. Let me explain what a venture studio is.
Yes, please.
For those people who haven't run into that term before, a venture studio is kind of like a cross between an accelerator and a VC firm. You have all your people, the people on staff in a venture studio are creating the businesses. They're not recruiting them from other places, and they then provide funding or arrange funding for these startup businesses and help them get off the ground. And typically the staff in the venture studio will actually create the business and will nurse it into operation and then hand it off to another team that will take and run with it. So if you think about something like creating a distillery or a brewery or a winery or a cidery, these are things that can easily be started in a community. And the thing that's important is that these are prime businesses or prime jobs that they're creating, which means that they're bringing money from outside the community inside the community. As an example, if you start a local coffee shop or a bakery or something that just circulates the money locally, you want to actually bring money in from outside the community, and that makes a positive indent on the income for everybody. So one of the papers I wrote lists a total of 30 different prime businesses, kind of categories of prime businesses that could be started. And this makes it such an interesting operation. Before I go on, do you have any questions on that part?
Yeah, I want to dive into that a little bit. On this show in the past, we've talked about community revitalization and a number of the challenges that are faced by the communities that sometimes seems like it's impossible to dig out of the economic hole in which they exist. And the concept of fostering entrepreneurs, brand new startup businesses has been around forever. And it is true that economic development policies and programs overly favor recruitment of businesses in from outside, which has all kinds of questions associated with it. Why would a business move if it's being successful somewhere else? Why would it relocate in a new neighborhood? And all these old policies and programs that might have been justified by saying, well, we've created new jobs, new taxes, and so forth, as you pointed out, are no longer necessarily true. COVID has created a change in where the worker resides relative to where they work. And a lot of the old practices, the techniques and so forth, are no longer true today. So we have a challenge of how do you start up a business that is actually going to create something of value, and as you properly framed it, a primary business that sells products and services outside of the community in order to bring new money into the community. And what a lot of people don't understand is that if you buy from Amazon, it's possible that none of the money stays in the community. The price for the product, the shipping, everything is exported from the community and nothing comes back other than the product. And over time, that means that the community is declining because money's going out, but no money's coming back. It's a kind of a simple import-export type of a question. When we talk about our country having a net trade deficit, that also applies to local communities. What is the import-export ratio or the net trade deficit of a community? Because if it's negative, that community is dying. It's getting smaller and it's going to disappear over time. So new businesses with new jobs that are creating new products and services that are sold outside of the community to other people creates the mechanism by which wealth can be grown within the community and sets the table for improved economic activity. So, Tom, you've identified a number of businesses that you believe can be set up in this new paradigm where the residency of the worker is not the dominant issue in figuring out where we want to go. So give me an example what one of these businesses is and how you see that it would work in today's current paradigm.
Um, yeah, let me back up just a little bit. The first thing is we need to actually create this cluster of people that are startup entrepreneurs, people that hang out with each other. They learn a lot from each other. This is not something that's normally taught in a regular school. So part of this would start, the Neumann engine would start by building a co-working space in the middle of the community, and the co-working space would have classrooms and meeting rooms, and it would have something I refer to as a how-to school. A how-to school is how to do things like how to start selling products on Amazon, or how to create your own AI inspired marketing engine, or there's any number of these, and these could all be done as a one day or a half day seminar inside of a classroom. Now this is intended to be purposely local so that people will rub shoulders with other people and start networking. And typically when you go to one of these how-to seminars, you're learning what's needed with the basics. You're not learning all the theory and everything behind it. So you know enough to get started, and it's probably not enough. And so you're going to end up joining a local meetup group and get to know the people better. So this cluster of people, this startup engine that you're creating, all these people that are interested in starting their own businesses, and the world is moving faster than ever before. So it's really important to have these people networking and bouncing ideas off of each other to see what works and what doesn't work. And then there's a number of businesses that can get started with the people in the venture studio part of this that will actually launch the business. And let's take, for example, well, this is kind of silly, but just the idea of creating online courses. Having a business that's creating online courses could actually be a very profitable business. And you could do that, have people creating courses every day of the week. You can have your own studio, have people come in and create the courses. You can coach them along the way, and you can produce a course within less than a day, actually, and then be off and running. Another type of business might be health camps. There's lots of people that when my wife found out she had cancer, she ended up going to different cancer camps, for lack of a better term. These camps are literally all over the world. There's some areas that, at one point she ended up getting septic shock, and there's virtually no place out there that you can go if you have septic shock. There's very few doctors that know much about it or know how to treat it. And yet there's millions of people that get septic shock every year, and only 30% of the people survive. So having a post-sepsis camp or school, that would be another example of one that would actually be very, very profitable, I think. But if you wanted to start your own winery, as an example, you don't have to have your own vineyards to start your own winery. You can have the grapes imported from around the world. You can have different fruits imported, and there's some great examples all across the country of these type of wineries, and they've become very successful doing that. Um, and so there's any number of businesses. I'd have to go through the list again to remember all the names of them.
Yeah, so let's talk about this venture studio concept, because I'm familiar with business incubators, accelerators, all kinds of hacker groups, meetup groups, and the whole nine yards. These are all in some degree supporting entrepreneurs, being entrepreneurs, and trying to be successful in their own businesses. And by and large, they don't work. They they don't bring enough value. They don't bring the right kind of assistance or support to the table, and so they're largely ineffective. So one of the things you mentioned that a venture studio would bring would be to bring investment capital to the table, which is often what incubators and accelerators lack. They end up looking more like cheering squads rather than having somebody that can actually play an actual position. So what would you do in a venture studio that would be different than a common incubator or accelerator? And how would you get the money into a venture studio to be available for these entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So typically, in a community is struggling or failing. It could be a municipal bond, or it could be state money, or it could be grant money that comes in, that the people in the venture studio would be working with. And the venture studio typically consists of like 8 to 12 people. And these are savvy startup entrepreneurs. You've been around the block several times. And I like to refer this as the messy front end. And most people aren't very comfortable with the messy front end of starting businesses. And so you get a group of those people that are comfortable in that space. And it's been shown that venture studios have a much higher success rate than like accelerators or incubators. It's because they're tracking what's working and what isn't working. They're starting the next one, and they're looking at what's happening in the past one. And so they'll be launching a half dozen startup businesses every year. This is it's a proven business model already, but they haven't caught on in a big way just yet. I think venture studios are going to be the next big hit coming down.
You see, one of the keys to this is that the venture studio is a team of professional entrepreneurs who can share their knowledge and experience and support with amateur or rookie entrepreneurs to get new businesses launched. So this is in some ways a factory where the raw materials of entrepreneurs and new business opportunities are brought together under the oversight and, to some degree, decision making of the experienced entrepreneurs with enough capital to move them through this educational stage where the rookies learn what they need to learn as needed, when needed, to get into revenue generation and start actually operating a business. So this would also be way different than classical education, where you go and get a batch of information at a school or institution and try to remember what it was when you get back to where you need to use it. So yes, dive in on any part of that, on why a venture studio is having more success than all the other things that have been tried in the past.
Yeah, I always like to say that the colleges today are um, they're a just in case operation. You need to learn all of this just in case you might need it sometime in the future, which is a really poor fit for our just in time business world. Um, the um, the people that work in a venture studio, some of them will specialize in marketing, some will specialize in product development, some will specialize in um, um, just the whole execution part, um, and go to market strategies, that sort of thing. Um, and they're doing it again and again with different products, and they know what works and what doesn't work. Now, this is um, miles apart from a typical startup entrepreneur that doesn't know any of this stuff. Um, and to go from one product to another um, in the same setting, this actually works very well because then you have all this past knowledge. Yeah, especially if you're working with a specific community, you know what things work with this community, what things work with other communities. Um, yeah, you you can test things out, and there's a whole lot of kind of what I refer to as foundational knowledge that's happening, building up inside that community. Then, and that I think is such an important component of all this that um, cities right now have not had um, any experience working with a situation like this, and so creating this type of Neumann engine inside of a city where you're generating new businesses, and over a five-year period of time, you might create 15, 20 businesses, prime businesses, and this dramatically changes the the average income on the street, dramatically changes the income of the whole community, and just the economics of all of this just changes uh, rather quickly. So a deteriorating city, and in my paper that I wrote, I used two examples. One was Pueblo, Colorado, and the other is Augusta, Georgia. And these are radically different situations, different cities, different parts of the country, but the same principles would apply. Now you would actually leverage some of the local talent. The local talent is talented in um, other areas, um, and so you try to leverage what the local talent is, things that they're good at, and bring them into play as well. But eventually, each of these startup businesses gets handed off to a startup team, and they take and run with it. Um, they have the venture studio behind them that's coaching them from the background, and very likely it'll be more likely a success than not a success. So
Well, so yeah, commonly an incubator or accelerator would have what we call shared facilities. It would have a roof over your head. It would have space to work at.
yeah,
You might have a copier or internet access, and in effect, in a co-working space, that all it is a physical facility that gives you an ability to perform certain functions. So, as you're describing the venture studio, what I'm hearing is that there is a team of experts who are all fractional basically experts where you're sharing in access to a marketing person or somebody like myself who is does this for different companies and raising capital, and so the ability to move a business forward is elevated greatly because it's not completely dependent upon the rookie entrepreneur to figure it out on their own. They're getting guidance, direction, and support from this team of experts who act as fractional CEOs, CFOs, CMOs, CSOs, CSIOs, all the different alphabets that are out there. And I could see that making a huge difference. Then I guess the question then becomes, if somebody is supposed to put up the money for a venture studio, obviously, if a city were to do this, they would want to see a return on their investment in the form of taxes that are paid locally that cover the cost of putting this together. They're not wanting to build businesses for other communities or other things. And I think this is one of the challenges that we're seeing today, as you described it, is that this is new. The cities have not adopted new economic development programs and policies reflecting this new paradigm of work from home, work from anywhere that we've seen. And at the same time, we're seeing more and more businesses that are digital rather than physical in structure, meaning that they could be anywhere in the world and
Right.
run and operate their business. So why would they come to a common area in a venture studio when they could work from home or work from Rome or work
Yeah.
from the mountains or something?
Yeah, great question. And in fact, a lot of people will still work from on online businesses, so work remotely. Um, but there's a lot of camaraderie in just being around other like-minded people. Um, I work in a basement office. It's very lonely down here, and I love the idea of hanging out with other people that are doing something similar, and I get inspired when I hang out with those people. I think that's kind of a common denominator that um, there's missing components to this thing where you're just working. You can work all around the world, but um, you don't get to know anybody very well. Uh, having good friends close by, people you can rely on, friends you can talk about your problems with. That's a very much a missing part of entrepreneurship. Is all about taking risks and dealing with problems and contrarian issues. That's a very challenging environment, and it's good to have a support network there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when COVID happened and we all found ourselves working out of our houses, that we lost out on a lot of the common social interaction. We were not talking to the same people all the time. We were talking to people less frequently. The chance of a serendipitous get together, meeting, or exchange of information disappeared altogether.
Right.
I found that a lot of my client pipeline came from attending a industry or professional event, and somebody said, "Hey, Carl, I want you to meet somebody or talk to somebody," or "I just remembered that I know somebody should talk to you," and that disappeared. So
Right.
it got awful quiet sometimes when until you got your systems back in place. And some of us, like this show, this is a replacement for part of that common social interaction, trying to come up with new and better ways to have people continue to interact over time. But I don't think we've figured this out yet. I think that too often we feel like we're talking to ourselves, and we're still missing out on these things that are not planned, not intended, but nonetheless are part of a formula for success, where we were saying, I need to go to so many events per week. I need to be in so many places where I'm going to meet one on many
Yeah.
potential contacts and prospects. So going back to this venture studio, it seems like to have a team of experts available to lead, nurture, and support these rookie entrepreneurs would have a relatively high cost. So is there going to be any kind of filtering system to qualify people to be rookie entrepreneurs, or are we looking at limits on the types of businesses that might benefit from a venture studio in order to assure or create a higher probability that the cost of operating the studio is going to be covered by the success of these new businesses.
Yeah, finding the aspiring entrepreneurs that have what it takes, that's that's challenging. You, typically, the savvy, proven entrepreneurs are the ones that have made a lot of mistakes along the way, and have a lot of arrows in their back as a result of that. Um, but I think we can speed this up by creating these clusters of entrepreneurs, people who have the experience. I mean, when I started the Da Vinci Institute, I didn't know anybody that would started anything similar to that, and so I had no rule book, no guidebook, nothing to help me along. So I asked a lot of people about it, and everybody had their own version of what they thought was the right approach. And in the middle of it, you kind of have to sort through it in your own mind, and you pick a path and go with it. Um, but having these people together in a space. Um, so let me explain kind of how this might evolve. In a downtown area, you have typically lots of empty storefronts. So you take some of this space and turn it into a giant co-working space that has a built-in how-to school, and you have your venture studio as part of it as well. Now the co-working space will have lots of meeting rooms and lots of event space, so things can start happening there. Now, to fill up the other retail space on Main Street, if you will, um, people just don't want to go look at products. That was a form of entertainment in the past. Now you can see all these products online, but it has to involve some sort of an experience. If you come and you see a product, you have to see a demonstration. You have to have experts you can talk to, or or you might be able to taste and touch and feel it that in ways that you can't online. And so it needs to be that kind of that three-dimensional experience rather than a two-dimensional one that you get online. And this is these are things that you need to carefully scrutinize, and so you don't just put up a general gift shop like you did in the past, run a store on Main Street, and those ended up being mostly hobbies because they weren't a full-time business for most people. Um, but but if you have this team of entrepreneurs there that you can bounce ideas off of, then you can actually get a sense as, oh, this might actually work, or this won't work. Um, and so let's switch and try this idea instead. So, uh, so anyway, getting back, I guess I forgot what your original question was, but
I was trying to address the issue that um, you've got expensive resources that are being deployed in order to facilitate new business building.
right,
And we've got a lot of people out there who, as rookies, will not survive, will not become true entrepreneurs because they don't have the mindset, they don't have the tenacity, they don't have the other characteristics that you're looking for. And so I'm kind of raising the question, are you going to have an application process? Is there going to be some kind of filtering system put in place to try to identify rookie entrepreneurs that have what it may take to survive? Who's bringing the ideas forward that the rookie entrepreneurs would be working on to create a new product or service?
yeah,
Because my experience has been that most of the rookie entrepreneurs are going to bring forth an idea that has it doesn't have enough merit
yeah.
to
So
justify it.
yeah, most of the ideas will come from inside the venture studio. And yes, once they start looking for a startup team to hand off the business to, there will be a filtering system. there will be a way of actually screening these people. And there's going to be a number of services provided, ongoing services provided by the venture studio, such as marketing, such as other consulting services and stuff. And so these will be paid for services that the startup operation will pay for on a monthly basis, but they'll get the experience that comes along with it. So it's interesting that we're running into this era where we can actually have a lot of one person business operations. Somebody can create an AI agent and start selling memberships to it, and then you got a full scale operation. How long it lasts, we don't know. These things are happening very quickly, but having a team of people, 4 or 5 talented people that understand marketing, that understand the business execution, that understand logistics, product development, all of these things are very important. And so when you have this cluster of people, I don't think you can emphasize it enough that this is where the true magic happens, because this starts rubbing off on the rest of the community.
Yeah, so you mentioned that a venture studio could basically, and I may have misunderstood this, but there wouldn't be any particular industry or market focus within a venture studio, that it could service essentially multiple markets, multiple industries. And that seems contrary to my own thinking in terms of a need
Well,
to.
actually, I think they will specialize.
Okay.
Yeah, um, in a community where you're trying to create a broad set of prime businesses, then you might have to bring in some other experts to help branch off into other fields. Like if you wanted to create some agricultural industry or manufacturing plant, or if you wanted to do food processing, that sort of thing. Um, Compounding pharmacies, as an example, are good for creating entrepreneurs that want to create some new type of pill that they want to sell on Amazon. Um, the the cure for everything that we're all looking for. uh, that that type of facility would actually have a lot of people that would be interested in that. So um, there's a lot of different ways of looking at this and approaching it, and very likely we're going to get a few things wrong up in the beginning, but this seems like such a fascinating project. This is something that I would love to be doing right now.
Yeah,
Uh,
so getting to the funding part of this, the city and municipality would clearly be one of the greatest beneficiaries of a program of this nature. But every city I know of right now is looking at a serious deficit and is slashing cost and cutting programs free. How would you see about pitching a city to put forth money that it doesn't have to try to turn this economic ship in the right direction and start generating businesses and jobs of the future?
yeah, it might involve some municipal money, some local money, but it also might be state money. It could be foundation money, um, and it could be a combination of all of the above that makes it work. But it would seem like once they fully understand the whole scope of this operation, um, and sadly we don't have a good example of somebody doing this just yet, which would make it very um, uh, much easier. Uh, it would it'd be easy then to go and say, well, look what this community just did here. But I think there are some examples of people doing similar things, and so I think it's the timing is ripe. Though they need to do something totally different. Uh, so economic development right now, um, there are still companies that are creating additional branches or different additional offices. So there tends to be the illusion of activity in economic development, traditional economic development operations, and so that keeps them alive and running. And to be honest, they probably do a lot of hand holding. They help a lot along the way, but once people see how successful something like this could be, I think they want to put their money in a different basket for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges you have is the lead time between identifying a business opportunity and getting it to a point of sufficient success that everybody can be in consensus that it is a success.
Yeah,
Because that could take 3 to 5 years to get there, even in today's overnight businesses dealing with AI and a variety of digital services. It still is going to take some time, and so we're talking with a group of people who don't have the experience. So now we're talking about rookie, by definition, rookie entrepreneur, economic developers having to look at a new business paradigm and not understanding it, not having experience. I spoke with a head of an economic development agency a couple of months ago about doing some stuff with AI, and he admitted that he had no background or experience. He didn't know how to evaluate it. He didn't know how he could justify putting money into it. And it wasn't that he was against the concept. He just was working with an empty room as far as an ability to make decisions based on his past experience. And so, I've seen a lot of references to venture studios in some of the media. What I'm seeing sometimes sounds more like spin than substance. So, how would you tackle this issue of pitching this to an economic development office and demonstrating that this is going to have some real tangible results, as opposed to being a more of another hipster entrepreneur program that we see all too often?
yeah, there are some very successful venture studios. Diving into them and understanding what works and what doesn't, being able to use those as examples, I think that would be a good starting point. There's also communities that are doing similar things. Boulder, as example, Boulder, Colorado has had quite a large startup community with different meetup groups and different organizations pooling their resources, so they're cross-pollinating ideas on a regular basis. Communities like that could be used as examples for parts of the Neumann engine. And I just think that this whole thing, well, the world is speeding up in a very fast way, and none of the traditional models are accelerating in comparison.
Right.
And so you either need to create something new, or are you going to get lost in the dust here? There's a lot of ghost towns that are going to happen here, and
Yeah, it's interesting in talking with many different municipalities about community programs and projects. It seems that economic development still is not considered a center of focus for these communities, even though they know they need new businesses, they need new jobs. There seems to be either no agreement or willingness to commit resources to address the problem directly. But the communities do have a short list of major problems, whether it's youth violence, or it's something to do with the environment or something like that, that they seem that they can rally the troops or the votes on the city council, the mayor's office, whatever, in order to move something forward. So do you think that in pitching a venture studio to a city that it may need to have a social cause or some primary banner that it can wave in order to get them to pay attention and put some resources into this?
Yeah, I think it needs to be focused on one specific area, with the ability to branch out. But uh, uh, I think it needs to focus in on the local talent. So if you're creating manufacturing jobs, as an example, you want to focus on what type of manufacturing has been done locally in the past. Um, if it's like in Augusta, Georgia, this Savannah River project there, a lot of people are dealing with um, plutonium and waste disposal, that sort of thing. That, and while you wouldn't have those type of businesses, you would have um, uh, businesses that can use that type of talent, and that goes off in a lot of different directions. And so you study the community, you study the history of the community, you study where these people have come from, and so once you understand the community, then you understand a lot of the possibilities moving forward.
Okay. Um, do you have a rough budget, round number, ballpark figure for what it would cost to get a venture studio off the ground?
Yeah, this type of operation, we've looked at it from a number of different angles, and it's somewhere in the $8 to $10 million range over 5 years, um, which I think that's not too bad, actually.
But for a rate of return, then it's got to recover that within some period of time.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So a venture studio will typically retain ownership, partial ownership of the businesses that it's launching. Um, Somewhere 15 to 30% of ownership of those businesses. So those businesses can, if they are successful and they mushroom into much larger businesses, um, can be uh, that can be a lucrative uh, mining operation later on. So you can recover that money, and then also the services that you're selling these these startup businesses. Uh, maybe it's 8,000 a month that you're charging companies for doing all of their marketing operations, their go to business strategy, their um, logistics, and things like that. Um, there's a fee for services. There's actually 5 different revenue streams. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, um, but there it's actually I think this has the potential to be quite lucrative.
Well, a lot of businesses don't make that much money. I mean, even when they're successful, the volume of sales, the amount of profits and so forth, which actually makes up the majority of all Main Street businesses. Um, do you see that a venture studio would be appropriate for that type of business, or are we still limited to high tech, high growth unicorns in order to make it work?
Well, this is a very specialized kind of venture studio. Um, this is a little bit different than the other ones that are just um, focused on a specific industry. Um, so uh, this I don't know another business model that would work. This seems to be hitting all the right buttons, and again, it hasn't been tried at the scale that I'm proposing just yet, but I think this has massive potential.
Well, I agree with you. I think that it does have potential. I think that economic development offices and programs need to be radically updated. That the focusing upon jobs that are being obsoleted, businesses that are shrinking, uh, this is not going to lend itself to the outcomes that we're talking about.
Right.
And so many of these jobs, there isn't any appropriate education available today. So the just-in-time education, I can understand that you essentially want to. I'm going to do an analogy to a recruit into the military. Uh, you want them to be a lean, mean fighting machine in very short order, and the quickest way to do that is to put them through the drills, through the regimen, to get to that point as quickly as possible. A lot of the programs I've seen in the past, there really isn't a method, there isn't a system, there isn't milestones or outcomes. It's kind of like we'll get started, and if you succeed, we'll know it when we see it. But if you don't, you're still there 5 years later, just kind of
Right.
spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
And I right now I'm having a hard time seeing a municipality come up with the funding. I think that unfortunately they're going to be more conservative and late to the party. So it seems like maybe a foundation who has a particular interest in community revitalization or in supporting a particular group based upon whatever metrics they're using might be the best source for funding of something of this nature. And it's I think it's going to be hard to get that first sale and get something in place unless somehow this can be piggybacked on some other existing project that's already got the political and social clout of the community to adopt it and move forward. It would be interesting to see where this could be inserted or integrated into some existing programs or projects of enough size and scale that $8 to $10 million is an acceptable dollar amount in the larger scheme of things. I saw where they broke ground on the new athletic stadium. I think it was in Las Vegas, and they're talking about it being a $1.8 billion type of extravaganza. And, for only a 33,000 seat stadium, small, it would be the smallest in baseball. And you're asking yourself, how many tickets would you have to sell at a 10,000 a piece to pay for a $1.7 billion stadium? Quite a few. But in projects of that size and scale, maybe it's possible that a venture studio could be a component part of that larger opportunity.
Right. Also, you should think in terms of having kind of a national venture studio to oversee the whole operation, and then set up a local venture studio in each community that's working to be revitalized. That way, the resources can be traded back and forth. And I think the national venture studio would be much easier to fund than the local ones, probably. And that there's a lot of revenue streams that are coming out of this. So as an example, one of the startups could just be a manufacturing facility that creates 3D printed parts and components. I actually took a tour of a facility like this a couple of years ago, and it's quite fascinating how all of the 3D printers, and this is a huge facility, were just operating, and people would send in their parts and they would start printing them for them. And so this type of business, manufacturing business, could be set up virtually anywhere. And now that we're coming up with new types of materials that can be fed into the 3D printers, this opens the doors for lots more opportunities.
Yeah, no, there seem to be a never-ending list of new businesses that have yet to exist or yet to be proven viable. And part of my concern is that it seems like all the call it current chaos, is going to lead to a much higher failure rate. That we're going to see more business failures try
Right.
and fail to move forward, which will have its own cost as we're in a constant state of experimentation on what
Right.
is a viable business of the future.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I wish we had a good example we could point to right at the moment. Um, this is still in the theoretical stages. We're fine tuning this, the white papers I'm writing on this, but I just think it has massive potential.
Okay. Well, Tom, thank you for being on the program today. Any last thoughts on Venture Studios, the Neumann? I got get the pronunciation.
Yeah, John von Neumann. Um, yeah, one of the guys that had one of the highest IQs in all history, for whatever that's worth. He died at age 53, so we would know a lot more about him if he lived a little bit longer, I think. Um, but I think this is the type of transition we're going to be making in lots of areas, though. Um, just just the way businesses are shifting and changing is happening quite dramatically. There's right now there's over 1 million AI agents under development around the world, and these are coming out at exponential speed here. And each iteration of these AI agents is getting better and better, and we're able to do things that with far fewer group of people than ever before. But at the same time, we need to figure out how to employ our talent. We need to employ the people around us. We need to keep people busy and working. I think that in the future, um, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to a guy working with AI. You're going to, I don't think AI is going to take all of our jobs away from us. I think it creates new opportunities. I think it creates new businesses. And I think it actually opens the door for a higher rate of employment than ever before in history. But of course, we'll have to wait a couple of years to find out if that's all true.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Thank you to the audience. This program is being recorded and will be available for later viewing at your leisure. You can watch it as many times as you want for free, if you care to do that. It'll be on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And thank you for everybody who's watching. We'll be back next week with another show on successful funding. So take care, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.